Now before we get into the video, I do want to say a massive thank you to today's video sponsors, and once again that is jerseyfifa.com. They really do help keep the content on this channel going, and they even sent me a free shirt which you can see on screen here. And as you can see, I got the new Manchester United home kit, and genuinely the kit really is top quality. I highly recommend their product. So make sure to get in a link in the description down below, and now if you use code JerseyFifa at checkout, you'll get 10% off your order. You get a great football shirt and you help support the channel, which I really do appreciate massively. So guys, today we are finally back with the match coverage videos. It's been far too many months, but they're back, and today we're going to be looking at the Community Shield final that was played yesterday. Now the way that we'll do this is by looking at what Liverpool done when they were on the ball, and then after that we'll look at what Manchester City looked to do when they were in possession as well. So as I said there, we will start with Liverpool, and as we'd expect they looked to play the ball out from the back. However, they were often pressed by Ehrling, who was also regularly joined by Kevin De Bruyne in a front two pressing system from City. We can see that example of the pressing front two here, with De Bruyne pushed up onto Virgil van Dijk, whilst Ehrling was over on the left hand side pushing up onto Matip to stop Liverpool playing out. However, unfortunately from a City point of view, I didn't think the press was that great. It's important to remember that City are behind in their preparations, but they just often seem to be a yard short. As a result, Liverpool were able to play their way through this poor press, and it was possible thanks to the numerical superiority in the centre, where Liverpool of course had three central midfielders around the ball at all times. Then on top of this we also saw Firmino dropping in as well, and with City pressing in what was essentially a 4-4-2 shape, it meant that Liverpool easily outnumbered City. Obviously when you give a player like Thiago this sort of scenario, he is always going to excel, and as a result Liverpool often played their way through the City easily, which allowed them to move the ball towards the middle. Now to be fair, Liverpool didn't actually have too much possession of the ball in the middle third, but when they did it was this 2-4 shape that they were using, with Thiago and Fabinho playing as a double pivot in the centre. We can see that part of the shape here with the two fullbacks just out of picture, but one thing we can see clearly is the two-man midfield, and it was also very much reflected in the average positions. Now again in this phase Thiago was one of Liverpool's most important players, thanks to his ability on the ball, which allowed Liverpool to have spells of control. However, they actually looked to play with more penetration. One player who certainly added to this was Joel Matip, and at every opportunity he looked to carry the ball towards the midfield, and this was just a sign that Liverpool weren't here to keep the ball for the sake of it, they wanted to move forward. Now we can see Matip stepping in here, and it is quite a simple thing that he is doing by carrying the ball into the midfield, but again it was that clear intent of looking to try and get forward at every opportunity. Now Matip's dribbling perhaps wasn't quite as exciting as what we saw from him last season. However, if he is going to be first choice as this match suggested, then he will be a key ball progressor. Now this was one way that Liverpool looked to progress the ball, however more often than not they looked to play more direct with long switched passes, allowing Liverpool to expose this really narrow City defensive shape. Again this showed that intent to get the ball forward as quickly as possible, and we can see how effective it was, with Trent here playing the first time long pass out to the left hand side, which took City out of the game. Actually what it also done was showcase the absolutely ridiculous passing range of Alexander-Arnold. It is not normal to see a fullback that is able to switch to play from these deep areas. Now on top of this we also saw switches the other way as well, with Thiago switching the ball to the right. From where Salah would come inside, Henderson would overlap, and Arnold would hold a narrower, deeper position in the middle. This was something that we saw for large parts of last season, and again we regularly saw Henderson providing the width, and it allowed Trent to sit slightly deeper in the space, the exact position he was when he scored. The finish from Arnold perhaps had a little bit of luck with a potential deflection, however if he is going to play this position all season and add long range finishing, then it really could be over for the league. Now as we pointed out earlier, a lot of the switched passes went the other way as well, with Arnold switching it out to Diaz, who very much looked to play as an isolation winger, looking to play in 1v1s. Once again it was often Trent that was finding Diaz in these positions, but from here Diaz did just frustrate me a little bit, because at times he was just a little too passive. He had the chance to get at Walker but didn't do it. Now at the same time there were still occasions when he did beat his man, however I just think that he could become so much more dangerous if he gets at his man a bit more, but it's early in the season still. That obviously applies to the rest of the team as well, and I think overall Klopp will be very pleased with what he saw. At times they looked a little bit vulnerable at the back, but on the ball they were really impressive. And just quickly on their new signing Nunez, I thought he came on and put in a really energetic display, and Liverpool's more direct approach really seemed to suit him, so it's going to be interesting to see how that develops. So now it's time to look at what City looked to do when they had the ball, and as we'd expect, they looked to play on the front foot with the ball from the back. And sometimes they faced pressure from Liverpool, but other times they had plenty of time on the ball to work their way out. Now we can see this time on the ball here, and it's not really something that you expect when you face Liverpool. However, I think it was largely because Liverpool had an early lead, so there wasn't a need for them to press as high. As a result, this gave City time at the back, and I thought that Aki in particular had a reasonably impressive game at the back for City. But I just felt that City missed the pure on-the-ball ability of Laporte. Now regardless of missing Laporte, City was still able to move the ball towards the middle third with relative ease, from where they then looked to try and build possession in a 2-4 shape, with Bernardo dropping deep to play alongside Rodri in a double pivot. We can just about see that shape here with the fullbacks playing pretty much in line with the midfield, whilst it is very clear that Bernardo is alongside Rodri, acting as a double pivot. Now, I done a video on City just a few days ago. I was talking about how Bernardo will be one of the most important players for City this season, and I think we saw it in this game with his ability to drop deep and progress. Now here I just want to point out one little pattern that I found quite interesting, and that was when Cancelo would cut onto his right foot, before then playing a long ball over the top, with Grealish bending his run in order to get behind the defence. Here we can see that Grealish is looking to make the run forward off of the back of Alexander-Arnold, and it actually worked pretty well, allowing Grealish to get in behind the defence before then looking to get at Matip. Now the reason I found this interesting is because we don't normally see Grealish playing in this way, but I certainly think that having this passing range from Cancelo in deeper areas could be hugely important. Now unsurprisingly, City's fullbacks were involved beyond that as well, with Walker in particular often holding quite a narrow position in the midfield, which then obviously allowed the wingers to play much higher and much wider. We can see Walker here pretty much playing alongside the two centre-backs in order to get the ball, and with the fullbacks often playing central, it allowed the wingers to stay high and wide to really stretch the pitch. As a result, it allowed the two wingers to get the ball out wide in 1-versus-1 situations. However, despite getting into these areas, the two of them seemed far too hesitant and reluctant to get at their man. Now, fortunately for City, the wingers weren't the only ones getting into these dangerous areas, because we often saw rotations, with the wingers now moving more central, allowing the fullbacks to make the overlapping run out wide. This is exactly what we can see here. Previously it was Mahrez that was getting into these sorts of positions, but these overlapping runs from Walker really freed Mahrez to move narrower, but again he lacked intent. Now again, as I said there, it was the two fullbacks that were really carrying the attacking threat. And whilst they are both extremely talented players, they can't do it by themselves, they need more from the wingers. Now whilst we were seeing these rotations out wide, the play in the centre was much more predictable, with Haaland leading the line whilst De Bruyne looked to play just behind him in a little pocket to the right hand side, in the right channel if you like. Now unfortunately for City and De Bruyne, he really struggled to actually get into the game, often being crowded out, and when he did manage to get a bit of space he was just off it, and his quality on the ball was not there. Now again, I think it's important to remember that this was only City's third game since the end of last season. However, their lack of sharpness was really apparent, and De Bruyne really struggled during the game. Now at this stage I'm sure Guardiola will remain calm. However, if City are to start the season with a win next weekend against West Ham, then they are going to have to be much sharper than what they were. Also, they're going to have to use Haaland much better as well. Throughout the game he made some really good runs behind the Liverpool defence, but City just didn't want to play the pass. That has to change. Overall, I thought it was a pretty decent game, and I thought that Liverpool deserved to win. However, City's expected goals were actually higher. Overall, it felt like a team with a full pre-season against a team with half of a pre-season, and that is what it was, with Liverpool beating the City players to almost every single ball. They just looked a lot sharper. In terms of reviewing the two strikers, I think they both showed what they had to offer, but Liverpool certainly played to Núñez's strengths more than what City did with Haaland, and for me that was the big difference between the two sides. But I want to know what you think, so let me know in the comments down below. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.